Unexpected invitation. Olivia Parker adjusted the strap of her second-hand cocktail dress, feeling distinctly out of place among the glittering crowd at the Heartwood Gallery's annual exhibition. The converted warehouse space buzzed with San Francisco's art elite, their conversations about brush techniques and color theory floating above the gentle classical music. She wouldn't have been here at all if her roommate Jessica hadn't insisted. "Come on, live a little," Jessica had said earlier that evening, thrusting an extra invitation into Olivia's hands. "My boss gave me 2 tickets, and I refused to waste 1. Besides, free champagne." Now Jessica, resplendent in a crimson dress that had cost 3 months of her marketing internship salary, was chatting animatedly with a group of well-dressed gallery patrons, leaving Olivia to wander the exhibition. Alone, she didn't mind. The solitude gave her space to truly appreciate the artwork without pretending to understand Jessica's shallow interpretations. Olivia paused before a large, abstract canvas, its swirls of blue and gold creating an almost hypnotic effect. She tilted her head, letting herself fall into the painting's depths. "It's about surrender, don't you think?" a deep voice said beside her. Olivia turned to find a tall man with thoughtful eyes the color of strong coffee. His charcoal suit was clearly expensive, but worn with a casual confidence that suggested he dressed for himself rather than others. "Actually," she replied, surprising herself with her boldness, "I see it more as emergence. Look at how the blue fights its way through the gold, like it's finding its voice." The man's eyebrows rose slightly, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Julian Reed," he introduced himself, extending his hand. Olivia hesitated before taking it. "Olivia Parker, not emergence," Julian said, turning back to the painting. "Liberation. The artist told me herself." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "You know the artist? I commissioned the piece." His smile widened at her embarrassment. "But I like your interpretation better." Across the room, Jessica was watching them, her practiced smile faltering slightly. Olivia pretended not to notice. "Are you an artist, Olivia Parker?" Julian asked, guiding her toward the next painting with a gentle gesture. "I sketch sometimes. Nothing worth hanging in a gallery." She didn't mention the dozens of sketchbooks filling her apartment shelves, or the half-finished canvases hidden under her bed. "And what do you do when you're not sketching sometimes?" "I teach art to elementary school kids. 3rd graders are surprisingly insightful critics." Julian laughed, a genuine sound that drew glances from nearby patrons. "I imagine they're more honest than most of the people in this room." They moved through the exhibition together, Julian listening intently to Olivia's observations about each piece. He seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts, never interrupting or correcting her. Even when she admitted to not recognizing a famous sculptor's work, Jessica eventually materialized at Olivia's side, slipping her arm through her roommate's. With practiced ease, "There you are. I've been looking everywhere." Her smile was brittle as she turned to Julian. "I don't believe we've met." "Julian Reed," he said, his tone noticeably cooler. Jessica's eyes widened in recognition. "The architect? Your lighthouse project was featured in last month's Architectural Digest." Among other publications, Julian acknowledged with a slight nod. He turned back to Olivia.
"Hi."
"Would you like to see something special?" "The gallery has a private collection in the back room." Before Olivia could respond, Jessica answered for her. "We'd love to." Julian's gaze remained on Olivia. "Actually, I was hoping Miss Parker might join me. The artist is a friend, and she's quite selective about who views her unreleased works." Jessica's grip on Olivia's arm tightened momentarily before she released it with a forced laugh. "Of course, I'll just mingle a bit more." As Julian led her toward a discreet door at the back of the gallery, Olivia felt a strange mixture of guilt and exhilaration. She wasn't the type to attract attention from someone like Julian Reed, yet here she was, being escorted into an exclusive viewing while her fashion-forward, socially adept roommate was left behind. The private room was dimly lit, spotlights illuminating only the canvases on the walls. Julian stood close beside her, not touching, but near enough that she could detect the subtle scent of his cologne. He asked softly, gesturing to a small painting of a solitary figure standing before an ocean horizon. "Olivia, studied it carefully. It's like the artist knows how it feels to be completely alone in a crowded world. Julian's eyes crinkled at the corners. Exactly what I thought when I first saw it. He hesitated before adding, I'm hosting a small gathering. Next weekend, would you consider being my guest? Hidden Talents, the invitation to Julian. Reed's small gathering sat on Olivia's desk for 3 days before she finally responded. Jessica had been uncharacteristically quiet about the gallery encounter, offering only a tight smile when Olivia mentioned Julian's invitation. You should go, Jessica finally said on Wednesday evening, leaning against Olivia's bedroom doorframe. It's not every day an architectural genius invites you to his home. Her tone was light, but something in her eyes made Olivia uncomfortable. It's probably just professional networking, Olivia replied, though Julian's lingering gaze at the gallery had suggested otherwise. Now, standing before the imposing glass and steel structure, perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, Olivia regretted her decision to come alone. Julian's modernist home was a testament to his visionary style, angular, yet somehow organic, as if it had grown naturally from the rocky coastline. Clusters of well-dressed guests mingled on the expansive deck, their laughter carried away by the ocean breeze. Olivia smoothed her emerald dress in another thrift store. Fine, she'd carefully altered and approached the entrance. Before she could ring the bell, the door swung open to reveal Julian, casually elegant in a light gray suit. You came, he said, his smile warming his serious face. I was beginning to think you might have changed your mind. I considered it, Olivia admitted. This isn't exactly my usual Saturday night. Julian's laugh was genuine as he guided her inside. What is your usual Saturday night? Takeout and sketching while watching documentaries about Renaissance painters, she said, then immediately regretted her honesty. I lead a thrilling life. That actually sounds perfect. Julian's hand rested lightly on the small of her back. As he introduced her to various guest designers, artists, fellow architects whose names Olivia recognized from magazines, throughout the evening, Julian stayed close, seamlessly incorporating her into conversations while ensuring she was never overwhelmed. He seemed genuinely proud to have her there, which baffled Olivia. She was nobody in this world of creative elites. Julian, darling, who's your charming friend? A statuesque woman with a silver pixie cut approached them, her calculating gaze assessing Olivia. Diana Winters, meet Olivia Parker, Julian said. Diana is my business partner and oldest friend. How lovely, Diana said, though her tone suggested otherwise. And what do you do, Olivia? I teach art to elementary school children, Olivia replied, lifting her chin slightly. Diana's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. Sweet, Julian. Has always had a soft spot for educators. His mother was a university professor, you know. Before Olivia could respond, Julian smoothly interjected. Olivia has a remarkable eye for composition. Our insights at the Heartwood exhibition were more perceptive than most professional critics I know. Diana's smile tightened. Is that so? Are you a collector then, Olivia? Not exactly, Olivia said. Hey, my apartment barely has room for a sofa, let alone art worth collecting. A few nearby guests chuckled, and Julian's eyes crinkled with amusement. Diana, however, seemed unimpressed. Julian Henderson is looking for you, Diana said pointedly. Something about the Singapore project. Julian hesitated, glancing at Olivia. Would you excuse me for just a moment? Please, explore the house. The studio upstairs has the best view. As Julian reluctantly departed with Diana, Olivia wandered through the modernist space, admiring the thoughtful architecture and carefully curated art pieces. She eventually found her way to the mentioned studio, a light-filled space with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the ocean. Drafting tables and architectural models occupied one half of the room, while the other contained painting supplies and several blank canvases. Unable to resist, Olivia picked up a charcoal pencil and one of the sketchbooks lying open on a table. She began drawing the dramatic coastline visible through the windows, losing herself in the familiar rhythm of creation. You lied to me, Julian's voice came from behind her, startling Olivia so badly she dropped the sketchbook. I'm so sorry, she stammered, bending to retrieve it. I shouldn't have touched your things. Julian crossed the room and picked up the sketchbook before she could reach it. He studied her drawing with intense focus. You said you sketch sometimes. This is not sometimes work, Olivia. This is the work of someone who lives and breathes art. Heat flooded her cheeks. It's just a hobby. Julian shook his head, flipping through the pages she'd filled. No, this is talent. Raw and untrained, perhaps, but genuine. He looked up at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Why are you hiding this? The question hit too close. To a truth Olivia rarely acknowledged. I'm not hiding anything. I teach art. I don't create it professionally. But you could, Julian said softly. These compositions, the way you capture light, have you ever had formal training? Olivia looked away. I started an MFA program 3 years ago. I dropped out after 1 semester. Why? The simple question hung between them. Outside, the party continued, the sound of laughter and conversation floating up from below. Because people like your friend Diana made it very clear that people like me don't belong in that world, Olivia finally said. Because I couldn't afford the materials. Because I worked 2 jobs, while my classmates had family galleries to showcase their work. Because she stopped, abruptly embarrassed by her outburst. Julian set the sketchbook down and moved closer. To her, Diana can be ... protective. She doesn't define the art world, Olivia, doesn't she, though? People who look at price tags before brushstrokes, who care more about who you know than what you create. Julian's hand gently lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. Not everyone. Not me. The intensity in his eyes made Olivia's breath catch. For a moment she thought he might kiss her, but the studio door swung open as Diana appeared. There you are, she said, her tone sharp. Henderson is leaving, Julian. You need to say goodbye. Julian's hand dropped away from Olivia's face, but his eyes held hers for one more moment. We'll continue this conversation, he promised quietly, before turning to follow Diana. Alone again. Olivia glanced down at her sketch, suddenly seeing it through Julian's eyes, not as a hobby or pastime, but as what she'd always been afraid. To acknowledge her true calling, her phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. How's the fancy party? Bet they're all pretentious snobs. Want me to create an emergency so you can escape? Olivia stared at the message, realizing that Jessica expected, perhaps even hoped, that she would feel out of place here, just as she had always encouraged Olivia to see her art as merely a hobby, with sudden clarity. Olivia understood that she had allowed others to define her limitations for far too long. That night, Olivia lay awake, torn between the possibility that Jessica was right and the hope that what she and Julian shared transcended the worlds they came from. Tomorrow, she would get her answer. Asterisk worlds apart, the following weeks blurred together for Olivia, as Julian pulled her into his world with an intensity that both thrilled and terrified her. After discovering her artwork at his gathering, he'd insisted on seeing more of her pieces, arriving at her modest apartment with expensive wine and genuine curiosity. Jessica had been conveniently absent during his visit, though her presence lingered in the pointed text messages that interrupted their evening. Working late again, don't wait up. And later, how's your architectural consultation going? Now 3 weeks later, Olivia stood in the corner of Bellissimo, an upscale Italian restaurant where the lighting was dim and the prices weren't listed on the menu. Julian sat across from Diana and Thomas Blackwood, a prominent gallery owner known for launching emerging artists into stratospheric success. So, Ms. Parker, Thomas said, swirling his wine with practiced nonchalance. Julian tells me you have quite the hidden talent. Olivia shifted uncomfortably. Julian is being generous. Showed me photographs of your work, Thomas continued. The urban landscape series particularly intrigued me. There's a rawness there, an authenticity that's refreshing in a market, saturated with derivative conceptual pieces. Diana's smile remained fixed as she cut precisely into her ravioli. Thomas is always looking for the next undiscovered gem. It's become something of a hobby for him. The subtle dismissal in her tone wasn't lost on Olivia. She'd encountered enough Dianas in her brief stint at art school to recognize the underlying message. You don't belong here. Julian placed his hand over Olivia's on the table, a gesture that didn't escape Diana's sharp gaze. Olivia's work speaks for itself, and it's saying something worth listening to. Thomas nodded enthusiastically. Indeed. In fact, I have a small showcase next month featuring emerging artists. I'd love to include 3 or 4 of your pieces. Olivia nearly choked on her wine. You can't be serious. Thomas doesn't make offers he doesn't mean, Julian said, his eyes warm with pride. It's all happening rather quickly, Diana interjected. Smoothly. Perhaps Olivia needs time to develop her perspective. Rushing into the spotlight can be damaging for new artists. Olivia felt a flash of irritation cut through her insecurity. I've been developing my perspective for 28 years, Ms. Winters. What I've lacked is opportunity. A flicker of surprise and, perhaps, respect crossed Diana's face before her composed expression returned. Opportunity without preparation can lead to disappointment. I think I'll risk it, Olivia replied, surprising herself with her confidence. Thomas laughed, clearly delighted by the exchange. Wonderful. Come by the gallery next Wednesday, and we'll select the pieces. He raised his glass. 2 new voices in art. As they clinked glasses, Olivia caught Julian watching her with an expression that made her heart race. It wasn't just pride. She saw there it was something deeper, more personal later that night. As Julian walked her to her apartment door, Olivia found herself torn between elation and anxiety. Do you think I'm making a mistake, being included in Thomas's showcase? Julian stopped, turning to face her in the dimly lit hallway. Do you think you are? I don't know. Part of me feels like I'm playing dress-up in someone else's life. Hesitated. Your life? My life? Julian's eyebrows rose. Olivia, I'm not offering you my life. I'm offering you a chance to claim your own. Distinction was important, and Olivia felt something unlock inside her chest. I spent so long convincing myself that serious art wasn't for people like me. People like you? Julian brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch lingering. Talented, perceptive, authentic people. People without connections or money or the right background, she clarified, though her voice wavered as his fingers traced the line of her jaw. The art world has enough privileged voices, Julian said softly. What it needs, what I need, is someone who sees things differently. When he kissed her, it felt both inevitable and impossible, like something from a story she'd never believed could be hers. His lips were gentle at first, questioning, then more insistent, as she responded. Olivia felt herself falling, not just into the kiss, but into the possibility of a life she'd been too afraid to imagine. The sudden ping of her phone broke the moment. Julian pulled back slightly, his breath warm against her cheek. Jessica, Olivia explained apologetically, glancing at the message. Where are you? It's movie night, remember? Julian nodded, stepping back reluctantly. You should go in. Would you like to join us? The invitation slipped out before Olivia could consider it properly. Something like uncertainty crossed Julian's face. Another time, perhaps. I have early meetings tomorrow. As she watched him walk away, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that despite their closeness, there remained a gulf between their worlds that kisses alone couldn't bridge. Inside the apartment, Jessica was sprawled on the couch in pajamas, a bowl of popcorn balanced on her stomach. There she is, the art world's new darling. Her tone was light, but her eyes were assessing. How was dinner with the elite? Was ... Olivia searched for words that wouldn't sound like bragging. Unexpected. A gallery owner wants to include some of my work in a showcase. Jessica sat up, popcorn scattering. Seriously, that's wow. Shh, she hesitated. And this has nothing to do with the fact that you're dating Julian Reed. The question stung more than it should have. He introduced us, but Thomas liked my work on its own merits. Of course he did, Jessica said quickly. I didn't mean it's just happening so fast, you know. 1 minute you're teaching finger painting to 8-year-olds. The next you're being discovered by gallery owners who happen to be friends with your hot architect boyfriend. Julian believes in my work, Olivia said quietly. Jessica's expression softened. I just don't want to see you get hurt. These people, they live in a different world. Live. A world where people like us are usually just passing through. Maybe it's time that changed, Olivia replied. But Jessica's words echoed her own doubts. The next morning, Olivia arrived early at her classroom, finding comfort in arranging paint cups and setting out paper for her students. This world, with its primary colors and honest critiques, had always been her safe harbor. Miss Parker. 8-year-old Zoe bounded into the classroom, her glasses slightly askew. "I made this for you." She thrust a colorful drawing toward Olivia. "It's beautiful, Zoe," Olivia said, genuinely touched by the child's rendering of what appeared to be the two of them painting together. "You captured my curly hair perfectly." "My mom says you're going to be a famous artist," Zoe announced proudly. "She saw you in a picture with that tall man who builds fancy buildings." Olivia blinked in surprise. "A picture? On Instagram?" Zoe nodded vigorously. "Mom follows all the fancy people." After class, Olivia checked her phone to find several social media notifications. Someone had indeed posted photos from Thomas's dinner party, tagging both Julian and Thomas. The comments beneath ranged from curious to cutting. "Who's Julian's new friend? Another charity case? Remember that chef from last year? Diana won't be happy about this one." The last comment linked to a Society page article from 18 months ago. Architectural wunderkind, Julian Reed mentors culinary student from disadvantaged background. The accompanying photo showed Julian with his arm around a young woman in chef's whites, both smiling at a charity event. The caption named her as Gabriela Mendez, whose remarkable talent caught Reed's attention during a community outreach program. Olivia stared at the image, a cold sensation spreading through her chest. She had never asked Julian about his past relationships, had never thought to question why someone like him had taken such an interest in her. The rest of the day passed in a fog, as Olivia wrestled with her thoughts. By evening, when Julian called to arrange their next meeting, she found herself asking the question that had been haunting her since seeing that article. "Julian, am I a project to you? Another talented nobody you can help elevate to prove your philanthropic credentials?" The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several seconds. "Where's this coming from, Olivia? I saw the article about Gabriela Mendez, and apparently there were others before her." Julian sighed heavily. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" Olivia pressed. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you have a pattern of discovering people from backgrounds different from yours, helping them access your world, and then, what? Moving on to the next one when you get bored?" "That's not fair," Julian said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "What I feel for you has nothing to do with Gabriela or anyone else. But you did the same for her, didn't you? Used your connections to help her career?" Another pause. "Yes." The simple admission hurt more than Olivia had expected. "No. I need to. Know that this is real, Julian. That I'm not just your good deed for the season. Come to my studio tomorrow," Julian said finally. "There's something I need to show you." As Olivia ended the call, she noticed Jessica watching her from the kitchen doorway, a strange mixture of concern and satisfaction on her face. "Trouble in paradise?" she asked. "Just a misunderstanding," Olivia replied, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. "For what it's worth," Jessica said, "I've known guys like Julian Reed. They collect people like they collect art for the story, for the cash of discovery. Once the novelty wears off..." She shrugged, leaving the sentence unfinished. That night, Olivia lay awake, torn between the possibility that Jessica was right and the hope that what she and Julian shared transcended the worlds they came from. Tomorrow, she would get her answer. Asterisk the revelation. The morning dawned gray and misty, matching Olivia's unsettled mood as she made her way to Julian's cliffside home. The sleek security gate recognized her car, now a detail that had once delighted her, but today felt like another reminder of how quickly she'd been absorbed into Julian's world. She found him in his studio, standing before a wall that had previously been covered by a large abstract canvas. Now it displayed dozens of architectural sketches and photographs, a timeline of Julian's career from his earliest student projects to his most celebrated buildings. "You wanted answers," Julian said without turning around. "I thought it was time you knew the whole story." Olivia approached cautiously, studying the visual history before her. In the center was a newspaper clipping showing a much younger Julian accepting an award, his expression more guarded than in recent photos. The headline read, "Homeless Teen Wins National Architecture Scholarship." This isn't what I expected, Olivia admitted, her eyes moving from the clipping to Julian's face. He smiled faintly. No one expects it. That's rather the point. Julian gestured to the earliest sketches, crude but promising drawings of simple structures. My mother was a literature professor before mental illness took her away from me. I was 13 when she could no longer care for us. The foster system separated me from my younger sister, Eleanor. By 16, I was sleeping in public libraries and sketching buildings I imagined could make people feel safe. Olivia's throat tightened as the pieces began to fall into place. The scholarship, ... double quotes, changed everything. Julian nodded, but not before I experienced what it means to be invisible. To have talent that no one sees because they can't see past your circumstances. He moved to another section of the wall, pointing to a photograph of himself with an older man in an impeccably tailored suit. Richard Blackwood Thomas's father was one of the judges, saw something in my work, and became my mentor. Without him, I would never have had the chance to develop my skills or make the connections necessary to succeed in this industry. So that's why you help others, Olivia said. Softly, Gabriella and the others. ... Julian turned to face her fully now, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. I know what it's like to have doors closed before you even approach them.
Yes.
I've mentored several talented individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds. Yes, I've used my connections to help them, not as charity cases, but because their voices deserve to be heard. What happened to them? To Gabriella. She's the head chef at Lumiere now, Julian said. The others have had similar success. Most of them still call occasionally. But none of them became more to you, Olivia. Observed, it wasn't a question. Julian stepped closer, his eyes intent on hers. No, none of them. The admission hung between them, charged with meaning. Olivia struggled to reconcile this new information with her fears.
Oh.
Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I don't want to be defined by my past any more than you want to be defined by yours, Julian replied. Because ... He hesitated, running a hand through his hair in an uncharacteristically nervous gesture. Because with you, it was never about mentorship. From the moment you challenged my interpretation of that painting at the gallery, I was drawn to you as a woman, an artist, a complete person, not someone I needed to help or save. Diana knows, doesn't she, about your background? Julian nodded. Diana was Richard's protégé before I came along. She resented sharing his attention at first, but eventually became protective of me. Too protective sometimes. Olivia thought of Diana's cutting remarks, her obvious displeasure at Julian's interest in her. She thinks I'll hurt you. She thinks everyone will hurt me, Julian corrected. Diana has witnessed every relationship I've had crash against the rocks of misunderstanding and mistrust. People who wanted me for my success, my connections, or worse, those who saw me as damaged goods once they learned my history. The revelation transformed Olivia's perception of Diana's hostility. It wasn't merely elitism driving her behavior, it was loyalty. What about your sister? Olivia asked gently. Eleanor. Shadow crossed Julian's face. We reconnected when I was in graduate school. She'd had a rougher time than I did in the system. By then, she was struggling with the same issues that had affected our mother. He glanced at a small photo tucked in the corner of the wall, a young woman with Julian's eyes, her smile brittle. She lives in a supervised community in Oregon. Now, I visit monthly and fund her care. Is that where you were last weekend, when you canceled our dinner? Julian looked surprised. Yes. How did you know? I didn't, Olivia admitted. Jessica suggested you might be losing interest, seeing someone else. A flash of irritation crossed Julian's features. Your roommate seems to have many opinions about our relationship. She's protective too, Olivia defended, though Jessica's motives suddenly seemed less clear to her. We've been friends since college. She's seen me get hurt. Before, Julian was quiet for a moment, studying her. And what about you, Olivia? Now that you know the truth, do you still believe I see you as a project? Another good deed? The question demanded complete honesty, not just with Julian, but with herself. Olivia moved to the drafting table, where several preliminary sketches for a new building lay spread out. Beside them was a small sketchbook, her sketchbook, which she'd left behind after their first evening together. Julian had kept it close to his work. "I think," she said carefully, "that we're both afraid of being seen for the wrong reasons. You, for your success or your past. Me, for my lack of pedigree or connections." She touched the sketchbook gently. "But that night at the gallery, you really saw me when I was used to being invisible." Julian closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. "And you saw me as just a man appreciating art. Not Julian Reed, the architect, or the former homeless teen, or Diana's business partner." The truth of it resonated between them. For a moment, Olivia allowed herself to believe that their connection transcended the circumstances that had brought them together. Then, her phone buzzed insistently in her pocket. With an apologetic glance at Julian, she checked the screen too. Find multiple text messages from Jessica. "Where are you? Thomas Blackwood is here at our apartment. He says it's urgent about your showcase. Something about the deadline being moved up. Live, seriously. Call me back. This is your big chance." Followed by the most recent message, "If you don't get here soon, I'm going to have to entertain him myself. Already showing him your portfolio? ... Alarm shot through Olivia. Her complete portfolio included deeply personal pieces she wasn't ready to share, work that exposed vulnerabilities she'd never intended for public viewing. "I have to go," she said urgently, showing Julian the messages. "Jessica's showing Thomas my private work." Julian's expression darkened. "I'll drive you. We'll get there faster in my car." The drive to Olivia's apartment was tense with Julian, navigating the city traffic with focused precision, while Olivia called Jessica repeatedly, receiving no answer. "I don't understand," Olivia said, anxiety building in her chest. "Thomas didn't mention anything about the showcase timeline changing. When we spoke yesterday..." Julian's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "He didn't. We had a meeting this morning about the scheduling. Nothing has changed." A cold realization began to form in Olivia's mind. "Then why would Jessica tell me, I think," Julian said carefully, "that your roommate might have her own agenda?" When they arrived at the apartment building, Olivia rushed up the stairs with Julian close behind. She fumbled with her keys, finally pushing the door open to find Jessica alone in the living room, surrounded by Olivia's artwork, including pieces from the locked cabinet she kept in her bedroom. "Jessica, what's going on? Where's Thomas?" Jessica looked up, her expression shifting from surprise to embarrassment as she registered Julian's presence behind Olivia. He couldn't stay. Had another appointment. He was never here, was he?" Julian asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Jessica's silence was confirmation enough. Olivia moved through the room, gathering her scattered artwork with trembling hands. "Why would you do this? Why would you lie about Thomas coming here?" "He's using you," Jessica burst out, gesturing wildly toward Julian. "Just like he used all the others. I was trying to protect you. By lying to me? By going through my private work?" Jessica's face flushed. "I needed to show you what you were risking. Your real art, the personal pieces that actually mean something for." "What? So you can be Julian Reed's latest discovery?" "That's not what this is," Olivia said, though a small part of her recognized that just hours ago she'd harbored the same doubts. "Isn't it?" Jessica challenged, turning to Julian. "Tell her about Gabriela Mendez. Tell her how you discovered her talent at a community college fundraiser, got her an apprenticeship at Lumiere, dated her for, what was it, 6 months, then moved on to the next project." Julian's jaw tightened. "You've been investigating me? Someone had to?" Jessica retorted. Olivia was too starstruck to see what was happening. "Jessica, stop," Olivia pleaded, but her roommate continued, years of resentment finally breaking through. "Do you know how hard it's been, Live? Watching you hide your talent all these years? Then suddenly this guy shows up, and you're ready to believe you're special? You were always special. I've been telling you that since college, but you never believed me." Jessica's voice cracked. "You never believed in yourself until he came along." The painful truth in Jessica's words hit Olivia like a physical blow. She had spent years dismissing her own talent, finding safety in teaching rather than creating, in remaining invisible rather than risking rejection. "Jessica," Julian said, his voice surprisingly gentle, "Olivia's talent is her own. I didn't create it or discover it. I simply recognized what was already there. So did I, Jessica whispered, tears filling her eyes. For years before you ever saw her. Olivia looked between them. Julian. His revelations about his past had opened a new dimension of understanding between them. And Jessica, whose friendship had sustained her through years of self-doubt, even as it had sometimes reinforced her fears. In that moment, Olivia realized she faced a choice far more complex than deciding whether to trust Julian's intentions. She needed to decide whether to trust herself, her own talent, her own judgment, her own worth independent of either Julian's belief in her or Jessica's protective concern. I need some time, she said finally, gathering the last of her scattered artwork. Both of you should go. Julian stepped forward, concern evident in his expression. Olivia, please, she said firmly. I need to think. As the door closed behind them, Olivia sank to the floor amid her artwork pieces that charted her journey as an artist and a person. For too long, she had allowed others to define her possibilities. Now, surrounded by the physical evidence of her own vision, she faced the task of defining herself. Asterisk, canvas of fate. The San Francisco fog rolled in thick and persistent, obscuring the view from Olivia's classroom window as she guided her students through their final projects of the semester. 2 weeks had passed since the confrontation in her apartment. 2 weeks of silence from both Julian and Jessica, who had gone to stay with her sister in Oakland. Miss Parker? Zoe's small voice pulled Olivia from her thoughts. Is this right, Olivia? Knelt beside the girl's desk, studying the carefully composed still life. It's beautiful, Zoe. You've really captured the light on the apple. I tried to remember what you said about shadows having colors, Zoe said proudly, pointing to the subtle blues and purples she'd incorporated into the darkened edges. You did. Exactly right, Olivia assured her, feeling a surge of pride in her students' progress. The classroom door opened, and Principal Donovan appeared with a concerned expression. Miss Parker, could I speak with you for a moment? Olivia nodded to her teaching assistant to take over and stepped into the hallway. Is everything all right? There's someone here to see you, Principal Donovan said, clearly uncomfortable. I explained that we don't allow visitors during class hours, but she was quite insistent. Diana Winters stood at the end of the corridor, elegant as always in a tailored charcoal suit. Olivia's stomach tightened. It's fine, I'll handle it. Could you watch my class for 5 minutes? As Olivia approached, Diana's usual mask of cool detachment seemed slightly cracked, revealing an unexpected nervousness. Diana, Olivia acknowledged, crossing her arms. This is a surprise. It's not a pleasant one, I imagine, Diana replied with uncharacteristic self-awareness. She glanced around the elementary school hallway, taking in the finger-painted artwork and construction paper projects displayed on the walls. You've built something meaningful here, it's the observation. Free from condescension, caught Olivia off guard. What can I do for you, Diana? It's what I can do for you, actually. Diana handed Olivia a cream-colored envelope embossed with the logo of the Blackwood Gallery. Thomas asked me to deliver this personally. Olivia opened the envelope to find a formal invitation to the opening night of the showcase, now titled Emerging Visions and scheduled for the following Friday. I don't understand, Olivia said. I never selected any pieces to include. Thomas made the selections himself, Diana explained, from photographs Julian had taken of your work before. She hesitated. Before everything became complicated, Olivia's pulse quickened. Julian sent him photographs? Without my permission? No, Diana corrected quickly. Julian took photographs for his own reference when considering how to best present your work to Thomas initially. After you? After the misunderstanding, Julian deleted them all. But Thomas had already saved copies of the ones Julian had shared during their first meeting. Olivia felt slightly ill. So Thomas is including my work without my explicit consent? He's reserving space for you, Diana clarified. The final decision is yours, of course. But he was quite adamant that your pieces deserve to be seen. The corridor fell silent as Olivia processed this information. Finally, she asked the question that had been burning inside her for 2 weeks. How is Julian? Something like approval flickered in Diana's eyes. Miserable. Working too much. The usual Reed coping mechanism. And you're here because in 20 years, I've never seen him like this over anyone. Diana's composure slipped further, revealing genuine emotion. I was wrong about you, Olivia. Wrong to assume you were just another person looking to benefit from Julian's connections. The admission clearly cost Diana something. Olivia recognized the protective instinct driving the older woman, the same instinct that had led Jessica to her disastrous intervention. Julian told me about his past, Olivia said. About how you knew him before his success? Diana nodded. I watched him build himself from nothing, not just his career, but his entire life. Do you know how rare it is for someone to emerge from his circumstances without bitterness or cynicism? Julian sees possibility everywhere, in everyone. Her gaze sharpened. Especially in you. Is that why he helps people like me? Like Gabriela Mendez? Julian doesn't help people out of charity or to feel superior, Diana said firmly. He does it because he remembers what it felt like when Richard Blackwood did the same for him. For us? She paused. But his relationship with you was never about mentorship, Olivia. Surely you must know that. Before Olivia could respond, the classroom door opened and Zoe peeked out. Miss Parker? Tyler is eating the blue paint again. I'll be right there, Olivia promised, then turned back to Diana. Thank you for bringing this. I need to get back to my students. Diana nodded, her professional mask sliding back into place. The invitation stands, regardless of personal complications. Your work deserves to be seen, Olivia. Even I can recognize that now. As Diana walked away, Olivia felt something shift inside her. Recognition that perhaps the worlds she had seen as separate could, in fact, coexist. Her teaching, her art, her new connections, and her old friendships might all be parts of a larger, more integrated life than she had allowed herself to imagine. That evening, Olivia stood in her apartment surrounded by her artwork. Without Jessica's constant presence, the space felt emptier, but somehow more her own. She had spent the past 2 weeks sorting through not just her physical possessions, but her own tangled emotions. The truth was uncomfortable, but clarifying. Both Julian and Jessica had been right about some things and wrong about others. Jessica had recognized Olivia's talent long before Julian, had encouraged her in small ways, while simultaneously reinforcing the boundaries of what seemed possible. Julian had opened doors, but those doors led to rooms Olivia had always been capable of entering on her own terms. Had she believed enough in herself to try? Her phone buzzed with a text. Message from Jessica. Coming by tomorrow to pick up more clothes. Can we talk? Olivia replied with a simple yes. Feeling ready at last for that conversation, she moved to her easel, where a new canvas waited larger than she typically worked with. Gift to herself after her first full paycheck from the school district. For 2 weeks, it had remained blank, a visual representation of her uncertainty. Now, brush in hand, Olivia began to paint with a freedom she hadn't allowed herself in years. The piece took shape organically, an abstract landscape that was neither fully realistic nor completely impressionistic, but something uniquely her own. Hours passed unnoticed as she worked, translating emotion into color and form. Dawn was breaking when Olivia finally stepped back from the completed canvas. Exhausted but exhilarated, she knew exactly what she needed to do. After a few hours of sleep, Olivia woke to the sound of keys in the lock. Jessica entered cautiously, her usual confidence dimmed. Hi, she said simply, hovering near the door. Hi, Olivia replied. Coffee? The familiar routine of Jessica making coffee while Olivia toasted bagels eased some of the tension between them. When they finally sat across from each other at their small kitchen table, Olivia spoke first. I'm still angry with you, she began, but I understand why you did it. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. I was so scared of losing you, Liv, not just to Julian, but to this whole other world that suddenly wanted you when I'd been telling you how talented you were for years. You were right about my talent, Olivia acknowledged. But you were also comfortable with me keeping it small, manageable, safe. Jessica winced. That's not fair, isn't it? You encouraged me to submit to local craft fairs, to teach art rather than make it professionally. You celebrated when I dropped out of my MFA program because you were miserable there. Jessica protested. Those pretentious professors were crushing your spirit. Maybe Olivia conceded. Or maybe I was afraid of failing, and you gave me permission to quit. The hard truth hung between them. Jessica stared into her coffee cup. I never meant to hold you back. I know. Just like I never meant to need Julian's validation to finally take myself seriously as an artist. Olivia reached across the table to touch Jessica's hand. We've been friends for too long to throw it all away. But things need to change between us. Jessica looked up, hope cautiously dawning in her expression. What kind of changes? Honesty, space, supporting each other's growth, even when it's scary. Olivia squeezed her hand. I've accepted Thomas's invitation to the showcase. I want you to be there as my friend, not my protector. Jessica nodded, wiping away tears. I'd like that. She hesitated before asking, and Julian? That's my next stop, Olivia said, her resolve strengthening. An hour later, Olivia stood outside Julian's office building in the financial district. Her newly completed canvas, carefully wrapped and tucked under her arm. The security guard recognized her and waved her through with a smile. Another reminder of how quickly she had become a part of Julian's world. Diana looked up in surprise when Olivia entered the outer office. He's in a meeting, she said, reaching for the intercom. I can wait, Olivia replied, settling into one of the minimalist chairs with her canvas propped beside her. Diana studied her for a moment, then nodded slightly and returned to her work. The silence between them was no longer hostile, détente, born of mutual respect, if not quite friendship. Da-da-da-da-da! 20 minutes later, the conference room door opened, and a group of suited executives filed out. Julian followed, his expression tired but professional until he spotted Olivia. He stopped abruptly, causing the man behind him to nearly collide with his back. Olivia, he said, her name carrying a wealth of questions. Do you have a minute? She asked, rising to her feet. Julian nodded, gesturing toward his private office. Diana caught Olivia's eye as she passed, offering a small smile of encouragement. Once inside, Julian closed the door and turned to face her. The polished businessman facade fell away, revealing the man Olivia had come to know vulnerable, intense. Genuine, Diana brought me the invitation, Olivia said, breaking the silence. I didn't tell Thomas to proceed without your consent, Julian said quickly. When you asked for space, I respected that. I deleted the photographs of your work from my phone, but Thomas had already, I know, Olivia interrupted gently. Diana explained. Julian ran a hand through his hair, a now familiar gesture of uncertainty. And have you decided? About the showcase? I have. Olivia carefully unwrapped the canvas she'd brought, turning it to face him. This is my newest piece. I'd like it to be included. Julian stepped closer, studying the painting with the focused attention he always gave to art. The canvas depicted a cliff face meeting the ocean, reminiscent of the view from his home studio, but with an abstract quality that transformed the realistic landscape into something more emotional. On the cliff stood two distinct figures, separated by space yet clearly oriented toward each other. It's extraordinary, Julian said softly. The tension between isolation and connection. Olivia said. About Jessica's accusations, your past, my fears, about the different worlds we come from, and the spaces where they might overlap. Julian looked up from the painting to meet her gaze. And what conclusions have you reached? That I've spent too long letting other people define my boundaries. Olivia moved closer to him. Jessica was right that I needed to believe in my talent long before I met you. You were right that I deserve the opportunity to share my work with a wider audience. And you were both wrong to think you knew what was best for me better than I did. A smile tugged at the corner of Julian's mouth. That seems fair. I'm not interested in being anyone's project or protege, Olivia continued. But I am interested in building something real with someone who sees me clearly, all of me, not just the parts that fit neatly into their expectations. Julian reached for her hand, his touch tentative, questioning. And have you found that? Someone. Olivia interlaced her fingers with his. I think I might have. though he can be frustratingly protective at times. So I've been told, Julian admitted ruefully. It's a flaw I'm working on. Work on it with me, Olivia suggested, closing the final distance between them. I have a few flaws of my own that could use attention. When he kissed her this time, there were no interruptions, no doubts, no unspoken questions between them, just the simple, profound connection of two people who had chosen to see each other completely. 1 week later, Olivia stood in the crowded Blackwood Gallery, surrounded by artists, critics, collectors, and friends. Her 4 pieces, including the cliff painting, now titled Convergence, hung on the featured wall, drawing considerable attention. Jessica arrived early, bearing flowers and genuine enthusiasm. "These are incredible, Liv," she said, studying each piece with new eyes. "I always knew you were talented, but this... She gestured to Convergence. "This is next level." "You," Olivia said, accepting both the compliment and the implied apology. Their friendship was healing slowly, evolving into something more balanced than before. Diana appeared next, impeccable as always, but with a warmth that surprised those who knew her only by reputation. "Thomas is bringing over the art critic from the Chronicle," she informed Olivia. "Try not to look too nervous, Miss Parker." Zoe's excited voice cut through the sophisticated murmur of the crowd. She bounded toward Olivia, followed by her embarrassed parents and several other familiar faces, Olivia's students and their families, all dressed in their best clothes and looking slightly overwhelmed by the elegant gallery. "You came?" Olivia knelt to hug Zoe, genuinely touched by their presence. "We wouldn't miss it," Zoe's mother said warmly. "You've inspired our daughter so much. We wanted to support you the way you've supported her." Julian arrived last, having given Olivia the space to experience her first showcase opening on her own terms. He moved through the crowd with easy confidence, exchanging greetings with colleagues and strangers alike. But his eyes remained fixed on Olivia, not with possessive pride, but with genuine admiration. When he finally reached her side, he took her hand and squeezed it gently. "How does it feel?" he asked quietly. Olivia looked around the gallery at Jessica chatting with one of her students' parents, at Diana deep in conversation with Thomas Blackwood, at Zoe explaining Olivia's brushstroke technique to an amused art collector, all the separate parts of her life converging in this moment on her terms. "It feels like the beginning," she replied, squeezing his hand in return. Later that night, as the last guests departed, and Thomas proudly informed Olivia that 2 of her pieces had sold to a prominent collector, Julian led her out onto the gallery's small balcony overlooking the city. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "Not a gift exactly, more of a return." He handed her a small, worn sketchbook, her first, from when she was 16, which she'd thought lost years ago during a move. "Jessica brought it to me," Julian explained, seeing her confusion. "A peace offering, I think. She found it while packing some of her things." Olivia flipped through the pages, marveling at her younger self's raw talent and earnest vision. "I'd forgotten how much I loved creating even then." "You've always been an artist, Olivia," Julian said softly. "With or without a gallery showcase. With or without me." "I know that now," she agreed, closing the sketchbook and looking up at him. "But I'm glad to have both." Above them, the fog that had shrouded the city for days finally began to dissipate, revealing a sky full of stars, distant worlds of possibility, each distinct yet part of the same vast canvas. Julian wrapped his arm around Olivia's shoulders, and together they gazed upward. 2 people from different worlds who had created something new and beautiful at the point where their lives converged. In the gallery behind them, Olivia's painting caught the moonlight through the window, the 2 figures on the cliff no longer separated by distance, but standing together at the edge of something vast and promising not an ending, but a beginning, painted in the bold, confident strokes of an artist who had finally embraced her power to create her own story.